Welcome back to Baha'i on Air and to the Deep Dive. It's really great to have you with us again.
It's a real pleasure to be diving in with you again.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive from Baha'i on Air. We're really glad you could join us again. This is part 3 of our special Deep Dive series looking into The Promised Day Is Come by Shoghi Effendi. It's a really foundational text, and if you haven't caught parts 1 and 2 yet, we definitely recommend going back. It'll give you the full picture for what we're discussing today.
Absolutely. It really does build. So today we're diving into a section that's incredibly direct. Quite startling, actually. We'll be looking at Baha'u'llah's powerful criticisms aimed at religious leaders, both Islamic and Christian, and we'll explore the historical consequences that seem to follow their actions. Then we'll pivot to the Baha'i vision for what religion is really for and how it can transform lives and, society itself.
Yeah, our mission here is to try and understand the history and the prophecy Shoghi Effendi lays out, and to connect those really deep insights to the spiritual and societal challenges we all see today, specifically through that Baha'i lens. It's kind of a journey into why things are the way they are and maybe what the path forward looks like. Okay, so let's unpack this. The text kicks off with some incredibly strong language pointed right at religious leaders. What's really at the heart of Baha'u'llah's critique here?
Well, it's fundamentally an indictment of, you could say, spiritual corruption. But Baha'u'lláh condemns these religious figures, the divines or clergy, saying they've committed the very things which the divines of the age have committed and are still committing. And he even says they showed more grievous cruelty and a fiercer malice. The main issue, they occupy these seats of knowledge and learning, but they've twisted things. They've named ignorance knowledge and called oppression justice. Okay. He says they essentially worship no God but their own desire. They care about naught but gold, and they're completely wrapped in the densest veils of learning. It's a really scathing critique of hypocrisy and self-interest, prioritizing their own power over truth.
Right. And he doesn't just criticize, does he? He declares this massive shift in power like a divine intervention.
Exactly. Baha'u'lláh states it very clearly. O concourse of divines, ye shall not henceforward behold yourselves possessed of any power, inasmuch as we have seized it from you and destined it for such as have believed in God. He goes on to list God's attributes. It's more than criticism. It's like a pronouncement, foretelling the crumble of their authority.
That's huge, especially as the text points out. Coming from someone considered unlettered without formal schooling, how does he challenge their claims to knowledge?
He challenges them head-on, using the Kitabi Aqdas, his most holy book. He tells them, weigh not the book of God with such standards and sciences as are current amongst you, for the book itself is the unerring balance established amongst men. And he contrasts this with his own background. We have not entered any school, nor read any of your dissertations. Incline your ears to the words of this unlettered one, wherewith he summoneth you unto God, the ever-abiding. Better is this for you than all the treasures of the earth, could ye but comprehend it. It highlights that real divine knowledge isn't just about academic learning. For many of these leaders, that learning had actually become a kind of barrier.
Yeah, barrier, veils. That's such a potent image he uses again and again. What's his call to them about these veils?
He pleads with them, really. O concourse of divines, when my verses were sent down, we found you behind the veils. We have rent the veils asunder. Beware lest ye shut out the people by yet another veil. Pluck asunder the chains of vain imaginings. He's urging them not to block people from recognizing God's newest message. The text highlights how they historically caused strife and repudiation of the faith, just like those who oppose Muhammad or Jesus. He says his revelation is like fire that consumeth the veils and water that washeth the souls. The message is clear. Get rid of prejudice, rigid traditions, self-interest, those spiritual veils. And what's really striking is how specific Baha'u'lláh is about who his main opponents are. He says, our enemies are, for the most part, the divines. And then this really provocative statement. Among the people are those who said, he hath repudiated the divines, say, yea, by my Lord, I in very truth was the one who abolished the idols.
Whoa, idols. That's intense language for religious leaders. What exactly does he mean by idols there?
He clarifies it. He's talking about men who outwardly attire themselves with the raiment of knowledge, but who inwardly are deprived therefrom. So yeah, not statues. He means people who look learned and holy on the outside, but inside their spiritual state is, empty or corrupt. He uses these powerful images from his hidden words like, O ye that are foolish, yet have a name to be wise, wherefore do ye wear the guise of the shepherd, when inwardly ye have become wolves? And that other one, O ye seemingly fair, yet inwardly foul, ye are like clear but bitter water. crystal clear outside but undrinkable. It's all about their inner reality, not just their robes or titles. They've become false objects of worship, blocking true devotion to God.
Okay, so after that kind of critique, that declaration of power being seized, you have to wonder, what actually happened? Did these powerful institutions just carry on? And this is where the text shifts, doesn't it? It details these almost uncanny historical events that seem to directly answer Baha'u'llah's condemnations, like a reckoning.
Exactly. The text puts it bluntly. God, the fiercest of avengers, was lying in wait, pledged not to forgive any man's injustice. So these condemnations weren't just words, they were prophecies, followed by very specific dramatic historical turnarounds, presented as divine justice for the clergy's opposition.
Right. Let's start with the Shia clergy in Persia, the birthplace of the Baha'i faith. What happened to them?
Well, there was this revolution, formidable in its proportions, in Persia. It basically challenged that ecclesiastical ascendancy and virtually overthrew a hierarchy that had been, dominant for centuries. It wasn't just about separating church and state. It was a fundamental shakeup of that whole dynamic. The powerful mujtahids, the top religious authorities, were diminished. Even their symbols were attacked. These beturbaned prelates in their traditional green and white turbans, forced to wear the kulai farangi, the European hat, and swap robes for tight clothes.
So their outward symbols were stripped. But what about their actual tangible power, their institutions?
That was dismantled too, systematically. They lost control of the waqfs, huge religious endowments that funded everything. Their seminaries, the madrasis and mosques, the masjids, became deserted. Traditional religious dramas, the taziyas and lamentations, radikanis, central to Shia life, curtailed. And then societal shifts like the disuse of the veil, promoting equality of sexes, setting up civil tribunals over religious courts. These directly countered the clergy's traditional power. There's that, quote, capturing the despair of the pulpits. Our souls are melted, alas, alas, whether we had never been created. It shows a complete stripping away of power, political, cultural, social, total reversal.
It's almost hard to grasp that level of change. The text gives that image of Shah Abbas the Great walking before a mujtahid once, and now.
Yeah, the contrast is meant to be stark. Shah Abbas showing deep reverence, walking humbly. And now, the mullahs are pictured hatless, clean-shaven, in the seclusion of his home, and perhaps listening to the strains of Western music. It paints this picture of total humiliation, irrelevance almost, and the text links it directly back. That infamous crew had indeed merited the degradation, connecting their fall to their past actions.
Okay, and then the fall of the Sunni caliphate in Turkey. That sounds even bigger, affecting what, hundreds of millions?
Yes, described as more remarkable and a more radical revolution.
Oh.
Remember, the caliph held spiritual sovereignty over more than 200 million Muslims worldwide, and it happened fast. First the Sunnati, the political rule abolished, then the caliphate itself, the spiritual authority, just extinguished, completely gone. The ex-caliphs had to flee Constantinople, a city Baha'u'lláh specifically prophesied about, to the land of the infidels, which was deeply symbolic and humiliating in Islamic terms.
And the wider Sunni world couldn't even agree on a replacement.
Nope. As the text says, they have agreed to disagree. This collapse led to huge changes: annulment of the Sharia law, disendowment of institutions, a new civil code, suppression of religious orders, even converting the Hagia Sophia into a museum, and banning the Arabic script, the language of the Quran, replacing it with Latin letters. It all ties back to Baha'u'llah's words about Constantinople. Oh, spot that art situate on the shores of the two seas, the throne of tyranny hath been established upon thee. He foresaw its downfall. A total reversal.
So, turning to Christian religious leaders, what does the text say about their experience? Was it the same kind of dramatic collapse?
Well, maybe not as critical outwardly as what happened to the Islamic clergy, but the crisis for Christian leaders is described as no less widespread and significant.
Mm-hmm.
And Baha'u'lláh addressed them very directly too. O concourse of patriarchs, he whom ye were promised is come. O concourse of archbishops, he who is the Lord of all men hath appeared. O concourse of bishops, trembling hath seized all the kindreds of the earth. And those famous lines, O concourse of priests, leave the bells and come forth. O concourse of monks, seclude not yourselves.
And what was the result for them? How did their influence shift over time, according to Shoghi Effendi?
The text points to a steady deterioration of their influence, the decline of their power, the damage to their prestige, the flouting of their authority, the dwindling of their congregations. Just a gradual but significant erosion. It lists specific examples. The end of the Pope's temporal power, his rule over actual territory, the rise of anti-clericalism in France, the religious irreligion in Soviet Russia with attacks on clergy and churches, also the breakup of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, Spain separating church and state, nationalism hitting missions hard, persecution in Mexico, the rise of what it calls modern paganism in Europe, a lot of factors.
It really sounds like a global crisis of confidence in established religious authority, even leading to this sense of institutional failure.
Absolutely. The text highlights the fratricidal war among Christian nations, like the World Wars, as a terrible sign of the Church's inability to prevent conflict among its own followers. It points to the powerlessness and despair of the Holy See, the Vatican, in the face of such catastrophe. So the conclusion is that religious leaders, both Muslim and Christian, bear primary responsibility for the state of the world due to their opposition and negligence. Now, this huge critique naturally brings up a really important point for people listening. Does all this mean the Baha'i faith is just dismissing past religions, given how harshly Baha'u'lláh judged the clergy?
That is crucial, isn't it? It's not about throwing out the religions themselves, right?
Yeah.
How does the Baha'i faith square this circle?
No, absolutely not. The text is emphatic. The divine origin of all the prophets of God, including Jesus Christ and the apostle of God, Muhammad, is unreservedly and unshakably upheld. Baha'u'lláh himself says, they all abide in the same tabernacle, soar in the same heaven, utter the same speech, and proclaim the same faith. His purpose, the text explains, is to widen the basis of all revealed religions, to unlock their scriptures, recognizing the relativity of religious truth, the continuity of divine revelation, the progressiveness of religious experience.
Yeah.
It's about seeing religion evolve.
So it's like seeing one continuous story of faith unfolding. How does this apply specifically to Islam and Christianity, for instance?
Well, for Islam, it points to the Bab's descent from Imam Soysing, Baha'u'llah's high praise for Muhammad in the Kitab-i-Quran, Abdu'l-Bahá's strong defense of Islam's truth, even Queen Marie of Romania acknowledging Muhammad. And for Christianity, its divine origin is unconditionally acknowledged. The sonship and divinity of Jesus Christ are fearlessly asserted. The divine inspiration of the gospel is fully recognized. Even the primacy of Peter is upheld. Baha'u'lláh praises Jesus' power. Through him the leper recovered. The unchaste and wayward were healed. The eyes of the blind were opened. So it's crystal clear. Baha'is honor the divine source of all major faiths and their founders. And it's also really important to balance that earlier critique. Baha'u'lláh doesn't condemn all religious leaders. He praises the truly upright ones. He says, those divines who are truly adorned with the ornament of knowledge and of a goodly character are verily as a head to the body of the world and as eyes to the nations. And also, he that beholdeth him hath verily beheld the true one, and respect ye the divines amongst you. This shows the real standard. Knowledge plus good character and faithfulness to God, not self-interest.
Okay, so if many religious leaders failed in their duty, what's the wider fallout for society? According to Shoghi Effendi, what's the big picture consequence of this judgment of God?
The text portrays our current global situation as a kind of judgment of God, because humanity largely failed to recognize the promised one and drifted away from foundational spiritual principles. Baha'u'lláh laments, the vitality of men's belief in God is dying out. The corrosion of ungodliness is eating into the vitals of human society. And he identifies the new chief idols people worship: nationalism, racialism, and communism. These modern isms, he says, are what governments and people bow down to now, leading inevitably to strife and discord.
And this spiritual vacuum also leads to a breakdown in morality, doesn't it? What are the signs of that erosion we see around us?
Exactly. The text lists things like the spread of lawlessness, of drunkenness, of gambling, and of crime, the inordinate love of pleasure, of riches. Also, the laxity in morals, seen in attitudes towards marriage, weaker parenting, rising divorce rates. These are viewed as direct results of religion's pillars weakening, and these false idols like extreme nationalism or racism taking over. The conclusion is pretty stark. Brimful and bitter indeed is the cup of humanity, because it didn't heed God's call. So connecting all this, what's the actual solution Baha'u'lláh offers for these massive global problems? How do we move towards that transformed world?
Right, it's clear unity is key, but how does he map out the path? What are the core principles he gives us?
Baha'u'lláh brings what the text calls the healing, the saving, the pregnant truths. These are the foundational Baha'i teachings meant to fix these problems and guide us, like the famous statement, "The world is but one country, and mankind its citizens." Or, "Let not a man glory in that he loves his country. Let him rather glory in this, that he loves his kind." And, "Ye are the fruits of one tree, and the leaves of one branch."
These are calls to really internalize our oneness, shifting our main loyalty from just our nation to all humanity.
That's a huge step up from earlier religious focuses, isn't it? How does Baha'u'llah's message build on what came before, leading us towards this global unity?
It's seen as a process, a progressive divine education. Jesus, the text explains, focused mainly on redeeming the individual fishers of men. Muhammad then introduced the conception of the nation as a unit. Remember, love of one's country is an element of the faith of God. That was right for that time. But Baha'u'llah's mission is even broader. He calls for the quickeners of mankind, aiming for the unity of the entire human race. And this goal is actually achievable now because technology and interdependence mean the 5 continents have virtually merged into one. We're basically living in one global neighborhood now.
And Abdu'l-Bahá expands on this, talking about the 7 candles of unity, right?
Yes, he lists these essential aspects: political unity, unity of thought in global efforts, unity in freedom, religious unity, unity of nations, unity of races, and unity of language. So things like a global framework for governance, tackling racism head-on. These are practical steps. He stresses that this wider loyalty, world citizenship, doesn't mean you stop loving your country. It just means you put humanity's overall needs first, seeing your nation as part of that larger whole. Which leads us to the final, really compelling question. Given all this turmoil and potential, what's the ultimate destiny for humanity, according to Baha'i teachings?
It sounds like we're heading towards something truly significant, maybe a positive outcome, despite all the difficulties we've discussed.
Definitely. The text frames this current gravest crisis, not as the end, but as humanity's turbulent adolescent stage, a transition period. Baha'u'lláh himself says, "My calamity is my providence. Outwardly it is fire and vengeance, but inwardly it is light and mercy." So this tough period isn't just punishment. It's a disciplinary and creative process. Its ultimate purpose is the salvation through unification of the entire planet.
So these challenges, these fires, are actually forging something new, something better, leading to real peace.
That's the vision, Baha'u'lláh prophesies. These fruitless strifes, these ruinous wars shall pass away, and the most great peace shall come. And also, soon will the present-day order be rolled up, and a new one spread out in its stead. It's the vision of the Golden Age, where all nations and kindreds will become a single nation. Religious and sectarian hate gone. All men will adhere to one religion, one common faith, one race, a single people. This is seen as the consummation of all ages, humanity finally reaching its potential.
So reflecting on all this, what does it mean for you listening right now? We've gone through this intense critique of leaders, seen prophecies seemingly fulfilled in history. We've looked at the roots of world problems and ended with this incredible positive vision for humanity's future unity.
Yeah, the insights in the promised day has come aren't just history. They give us a powerful way to look at our own world today. They really invite us to think about how we engage with these truths and how each of us, can actually contribute to that progress towards unity.
And this deep dive is just scratching the surface of the wisdom in these writings. We really hope you'll subscribe to Baha'i On Air Deep Dives to keep exploring with us.
Yes, please do. And share this deep dive if you think others might find these ideas helpful, especially that clear vision for the future. We'd also genuinely love to hear from you. Send us your suggestions for other texts or topics you'd like us to get into in future deep dives. Let's make it a shared exploration.
And just remember that final thought. This whole fiery ordeal humanity is going through, it's described as mysteriously paving the way for world unification. What you do, individually and together, really does contribute to that destiny.